Okay, we're going to start. I apologize for the late start, and we're going to actually wait on the questions until our fourth candidate comes, who is tied up at another meeting and has assured us he will be here shortly. He let us know he was going to be a few minutes late. So, before we start, we'll just get some of the housekeeping items out of the way. So, welcome to the last planned forum for the four candidates vying for the two positions on the Plymouth Select Board. This forum is sponsored by PlymouthFirst, and they wish to thank the town of Plymouth for letting us use the Great Hall, and special thanks to the local scene, which used to be PAC TV, for airing this live on the government channels and also on their YouTube streaming service. This not only is being live on YouTube now, but it will be available for replays right away. So, I'm Julie Thompson. I am once again your moderator, and as prior executive director of PAC TV and prior member of Plymouth Chamber's Board of Directors, I have had multiple opportunities over the past decade to moderate forums and debates for candidates running for many different offices. I am not a member of PlymouthFirst, nor do I live in Plymouth. The candidates have been given an overall explanation of how this forum will be run. There will be no opening statements, and responses to questions will be timed. A timer is very visible on the wall back there, and Alan from Alan Costa is going to be running the timer. Candidates, you will have to watch the timer, so look over there every once in a while to make sure that you're staying on time, okay? A 2-minute maximum will be allowed for most of the questions. I may present follow-ups or debates between the candidates with a time limit at my discretion. We have already received a number of questions from the community members, and we encourage audience members who are here to fill out a question card and forward it to Mr. Bulletin up here at the table. Questions should generally be addressed to all the candidates, but questions to specific candidates will be allowed, time permitting. Candidates will be granted a 2-minute closing in which they can use their time however they wish. The order for answering questions was assigned by a random number generator. I already have them printed out. The candidates are seated left to right, even though Dick's not here yet. From the audience point of view, in alphabetical order by last name. So Kevin Canty will be candidate 1, Betty Cavaco candidate 2, Dick Quintal will be candidate 3, and Scott Vecchi candidate 4. I'll ask the audience to please refrain from clapping or vocally participating until the end of the forum. Please silence your cell phones. We will have a brief intermission before we begin the audience questions and closing statements, if necessary, depending on how quickly we go or how long we take. Candidates, please answer the question that was asked. There will be ample opportunity for us to cover a myriad of topics tonight, and there are many topic-specific questions that you will be able to answer. So don't try to fit a whole bunch of topics into an answer, because most likely we're going to be talking about that topic in more detail. And finally, this forum is for the voting public. The candidates have been informed that I will ask them to back up their plans, proposals, or initiatives with a context for the data that they're using and the cost of such plans, proposals, or initiatives. In other words, to show us their math. So we're not going to start quite yet. We're going to wait for Mr. Quintal. And in the meantime, I absolutely strongly recommend that anyone at home, you can look at most of the forums that have been done, the local scene has covered or recorded, so there's places to watch them. Also, the candidates have done statements. The candidates have done a lot of forums. There's a ton of information out there. Please educate yourself. And we're hoping that we get a really good turnout in this year's election, because it has been pretty dismal in previous years. So we're going to take a little pause before we start the actual questioning. Anyone from the audience, if you have questions, please fill them out on cards and bring them up to Steve. And as soon as Mr. Quintal arrives, we will begin. All right, candidates? Okay, thank you. Is a family medical emergency. Hi, welcome back. I'm sorry for the delay. Unfortunately, Mr. Quintal is not able to join us tonight due to a family medical emergency. So let me reintroduce the candidates that we do have here. We have Kevin Canty, we have Betty Cavaco, and we have Scott Vecchi. Thank you all for waiting patiently, and we hope that Dick and his family are fine. So I already gave you kind of the rules and regs, so let's start right away with different sections of questioning. The first section is about voters' expectations for the Select Board. So according to the website, the town's website, the Select Board is the chief executive body of the town, and among other duties, its members adopt policy, directives, and guidelines, enact rules and regulations to implement those policies, review the annual proposed operating and capital budgets as submitted by the town manager, act as licensing authority, approve collective bargaining agreements, and through the town manager be responsible for the orderly operation of all agencies of the town, except those that fall within another elected town agency. This 5-member team, being duly elected by the citizens of Plymouth, are expected to work collaboratively and urgently on matters that affect every aspect of the lives of Plymouthians. So the first question, and you will each have 2 minutes to answer, is how would electing you to the Select Board promote teamwork, civil discourse, and workable proposals to address issues? And we're going to go 2, 4, 1, because 3 is no longer with us. So 2 would be Betty, and then Scott, and then Kevin. So Betty, you have 2 minutes.
Now, if I can just remember what you said.
The question, okay, I'll repeat the question. How would electing you to the Select Board promote teamwork, civil discourse, and workable proposals to address issues?
So one of the things that I was very well known for was constituent services. I've always made it a priority to answer anybody that contacts me, that sometimes I was able to help them, sometimes I was not, but my rule was within 24 hours, I have to give this person an answer. So that worked really well. For some, they may say it didn't work very well because I was continually answering questions and trying to tell them where to go and who, but then it didn't work out that well. So I just ended up doing it myself, and it was pretty successful. The other thing is that, we had a board of 5, and we didn't always get along, and we had some pretty serious blowouts, but no one knew that when we were sitting here as board members. So I'd like to be able to bring back that type of perception for people. People don't deserve like what's going on now with the board. I mean, we have to do better. And then the other thing is that this may sound odd, but I have somewhat of a gift. I can tell people. I organized for 6 years, organized unions for the Utility Workers Union of America. So I take those lessons that I learned, and I know that I can organize a small group for everybody to get along.
Okay, thank you. You have to just reset the clock for the next 2 minutes. The next would be Scott. Same question?
Thank you.
And just by the way, you can go ahead and talk to the audience out there. You don't have to answer me, just because I ask you questions.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
So I've served on numerous boards and committees, probably coming up on close to 20 years in the town, many of which are recorded, and people can go back and look at them, whether it's town meeting, the Charter Review Committee, the Redevelopment Authority, Historic District Commission, Charter Commission. Then one of the things that I've learned is that sometimes people just need to be heard. And when we have public comment and people come to the podium, you have to respect that. because some people just need to let their elected officials know what's on their mind and how they feel about it. When I served on the charter, was elected to the Charter Commission, I sat in these very same seats for 2 years. At least one night, if not two, and towards the end, I think it got to be 3 nights a week sometimes. And the best compliment I ever received was that I seemed to be the voice of reason in the room. And that when I spoke, it was an intelligent and thoughtful statement. And whenever somebody came to the podium, and whether I agreed with them or not, we heard them out, gave them their 3 to 5 minutes or whatever they were allotted at the thing, and then acknowledged them at the end and took that into consideration. And I think that's part of what's sorely missing from this board right now. There's definitely been a lack of civility. There's probably the most dysfunctional select board that I've seen. And what I hope to bring is I hope to bring that same character that I displayed on the Charter Commission to the select board meetings, where people know that if they come into the room, that I'm going to pay attention and hear them, that they're going to get their time at the podium without being interrupted. And then from there, we'll make an informed decision. And a lot of times I sit quietly, and mostly it's because I don't talk to talk. When I talk, I have something important to say or relatively intelligent.
Okay, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Canty?
Thank you. So I would say that generally speaking, I've gotten a lot done since I've been elected to the select board. Just in the past year, I was able to get a proposal passed through the select board and through town meeting to move the dates of future town meetings and future elections so that we're better informed through the budgetary process, to create a special revenue fund to collect money from Chapter 61 rollback taxes, to pass a number of policies, directives related to affordable housing and immigration enforcement, and to have meetings in communities with neighborhoods, addressing concerns directly to the board, and getting answers in a respectful, collegial way. I have demonstrated over this past, and that's just the last year. Prior to that, got a land bank through town meeting, got some additional liquor licenses for South Plymouth that was underserved, and have advocated consistently for 3 consecutive years to put money towards nuclear mitigation stabilization to preserve the biggest single undeveloped parcel in Plymouth. So I think I'm producing results. I also work in a day job that is in an adversarial system where we have to remain civil, even though we are antagonistic to each other. So I am used to being able to get things done, even with people that are coming at something in the opposite position from me and that disagree and have a vested interest in the alternative outcome from what I would like. And we are able to work collegially together to get an outcome that is best in the circumstances. And I think I have demonstrated in my time on the board that even people that criticize me, whether it be other board members or members of the public, that I do not attack those individuals. I remain calm, cool, and collected throughout because I think that everybody has a right to be seen and be heard. And I have demonstrated that. I will continue to demonstrate that if given another 3 years to do so.
Okay, so have any of you participated in any negative campaigning about any of your fellow candidates? Scott? And we're not going to do 2 minutes. I'm just going to let you answer that.
Sure. Some people have perceived some of my Facebook posts as negative. Really, I was clearing the air. A long time ago, there was some an interference with my promotional process that resulted in a lawsuit. And unfortunately, when the Plymouth Independent story was written on that, I was still an employee of the town, so I had to talk through my attorney. So I wasn't able to get my side of the story through, get the truth out. So some of the things that I've done in the beginning of this was to clear the air.
Okay.
And once I cleared the air, I moved on to the issues.
So you felt you were clearing air. It wasn't a negative.
I
Okay.
was clearing the air. Thank you.
Betty?
You may call it clearing the air. I call it harassment. But yes, there's a lot of negativity. And one of the things that I hear and I see on social media that I had something to do with the canned candy signs. You know what? I only raised like $3,000, and I spent $3,500 on signs. I don't have time. I don't play that game. People that have had their signs up, you can go and look. I've either taken my signs down or asked them to take them down for us. So there is a lot of negativity, and I don't want to be part of it. You know what? I'm here, I'm running my race.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Kevin?
So no, I haven't participated in any negative campaigning. I've been running on the issues that I think are necessary to move Plymouth forward, addressing affordability and smart economic development, and running on my track record that I just articulated in the answer to the last question. I think that's what's going to deliver for residents. Residents don't care about interpersonal problems or which board members like other board members. Residents care about what you're going to do to make their town better, their lives better, to make it easier for people to live, work, and retire in Plymouth. That's what I've been focused on. If you look at all the campaign activity, literature, all the answers I've given at every forum, and will continue to do when I'm knocking on people's doors, when I'm standing outside talking to residents at an event, no matter what, I'm always focused on the issues that I'm trying to advance, why I'm running for the board, and what value I think I have and will continue to bring to the community that I love.
Okay, thank you. So for the residents out there, that's their answer to the question of, as they've participated in any negativity. So take that as you will. And the next question I have is, in our form of government, there are a number of elected and appointed bodies charged with certain aspects of town governance. What matters are presently being put before the select board that you believe should be referred to these other bodies or other departments, at least for your initial evaluation and recommendation? In other words, are the things that are brought to the select board that really should not be brought to you right away, that should be maybe brought to you down the road, that's taking up time and energy and taking you away from other things that you normally do? And we're going to do 3, 4, 2, 1. So that would no 3. So 4, 2, 1. So Scott, then Betty, then Kevin.
I think anytime that another board or body of the town can filter through some of the issues brought before the select board, I think that's advantageous, because as a select board, we really do want to be efficient. You know what I mean? And we don't want to be up here rehashing old issues or beating something to death that another entity has already dealt with. So I think that's incumbent upon the select board members themselves with the agenda, and when the agenda is set, to ensure that there's an adequate amount of time, but that we don't overpack our agenda and stay here till 11, 12 o'clock at night if it's things that can be handled in a different way or manner. And that's one of the things, I prioritize and focus on what needs to get accomplished.
Okay, thank you. Betty?
so when we hired Derek Brandisi, our new town manager, and we sat with him and told him what our goals were, one of the things that was very apparent and very important to the board was we want the best and brightest for our town. So I personally don't agree with when we ask for those professionals to give us input, and then we take that information and, you know what, it's, not good enough. Some other group thinks it's not good enough. And I can say that regarding Article 37 that just passed. Our police department, our chief, had a policy in place. They still went through jumped through all the hoops, passed it out town meeting, and I just think it was a disgrace, because, now police are confused what they do, and actually that policy covers every town employee. So I think we hire the best and brightest. We need to listen to the best and brightest.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
So in terms of things that could get a first look by somebody else before they go to the select board,
Right.
I think that there are certain board and committee appointments that the board makes that could be vetted either by staff or by a committee that vets, and then we would appoint as an admin note. I don't think that should apply to things that any board or committee that controls money or has regulatory authority or has or is being tasked with the select board with like doing a specific thing, unless we want staff to populate that particular committee. But there are a number of we have over 60 boards and committees in the community. Not all of them control money, not all of them have regulatory authority. Some of them are just neighborhood type or issues or discrete things. And I think that having a committee to vet those applicants could be a benefit, because if you look at the last couple of months of meetings, particularly those about 4 to 8 weeks ago, we were appointing people to a tremendous amount of boards and committees that we would never hear from until we were appointing new people to that board or committee. So I think that's one thing that could free up time and not have any negative effects. I also think that there's a possibility where there are things with specific expertise, where the select board is water commissioners and sewer commissioners, and we could, in the medium term, create a advisory group that hears issues related to those matters, that have specific expertise that they could bring to the table, and then it would be up to the board to then vet the outcome of that process. That could be part of a stepping process towards maybe an independently elected sewer and water commissioner set, one board to do those things, or it could remain in that status. But I think having specific expertise for discrete issues that then release recommendations to the board could be a significant benefit and could free the board up to focus on policymaking and priorities in other areas.
Okay. And just a yes or no question in segue onto what you just said. Do you think it's appropriate for select board members to direct the committees that they appoint to act in a certain way? Let's start with Betty.
I actually think so. I have an issue with select board liaisons having a vote in any committee. The only committee that actually is supposed to be doing that is CPC. I don't think any of our staff should be on a committee and hold voting authority. So I think that, I've been a liaison to many groups, Harbor Committee, CPC, and CPC I voted, but any other groups that I had, I never voted. And I think we need to kind of get back to that.
Perfect. And Kevin?
So in terms of the board directing a board or committee that it appoints as to do certain things, it would depend on that board. Because some of them are applying state law or regulations, and they need to be able to do those things. We could, but if it's something that we're creating a board or committee to do a certain task, then yeah, obviously, because that's the whole point of doing it.
Okay.
If it's just to get community input, then you're putting them it's a somewhat vague objective, just get input on this. You're not looking for a specific outcome in that. You're just setting them a general task. But I don't think it's inappropriate as long as they're not subject to external laws or regulations that they need to abide by. So it would really depend on the board or the committee.
What the board is.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Scott?
Short answer, no. If they're a board or committee and they're designed to perform a certain task, then they have to perform that task. If a select board member came and spoke and tried to, educate or advise, but I don't think if there's a board or committee with a specific task, I don't think the select board that appointed them should be telling them exactly what to do, otherwise, why do you have them?
Okay. Thank you. So the last question in this section has to do, and this was sent in by a viewer. Last year, the board conducted meetings on the road across various places in Plymouth. They were well attended and held on weeks where the select board would have been off from their regular meetings. If elected, would you continue this option, and will you change how it is done, if so? And let's do 1, 2, 4. So Kevin, Betty, and then Scott.
Thank you. So I think personally, On the Road is a great initiative. It was something that I spearheaded, so I'm a little biased. But it had a real opportunity to get into neighborhoods, let people hear directly from their elected officials about issues that they cared about, get answers directly from them. And we were able to address a lot of local community concerns with intersections, with wells, with landfills, things of that nature, things that people didn't feel were being adequately addressed or given the attention from 26 Court Street. And I think that it made a big difference making people feel connected to the select board. Because I think down in places like Cedarville or South Plymouth, where it's upwards of 20 minutes to get here, that going there was an excellent olive branch, in my opinion, to make sure that they felt seen, heard, and included. We were in their neighborhoods, breathing their air, drinking their water, walking their streets, trying to make a difference and trying to make them feel included and heard. We weren't able to solve every problem that they had, but we were able to let them be listened to and actually heard by people right in front of them. And I think that did make a difference. I've heard a lot of positive feedback about it. I would be a strong advocate for maintaining it. Could we tweak it a little bit here and there? Yeah, maybe. But I think that having the content driven by the residents, we have all the other meetings here where we control the content. I think a core part of On the Road was that it's the residents that drive the content, and we are being responsive to them. We are coming basically to their neighborhoods, right outside their homes, to have them be able to talk to us. And I don't think we should be telling them what they need to talk to us about. I think it should really be as open and transparent as possible.
Okay, thank you. Betty?
I actually like the on-the-road concept, but I do not think we should be having it on a Tuesday night because we need to do the town's business. So I wouldn't be opposed to doing it on another night and doing it a couple times a month, but I think doing the on the roads and then seeing how the next select board meeting panned out and they're here till 11 o'clock and that's we need to take care of the town business first, but I wouldn't have a problem doing that on another night and still having our Tuesday nights here to take care of what we need to take care of.
Okay. Scott?
I actually like the concept of going out and bringing your government to the people. Unfortunately, that started a lot of the dysfunction with the board when people chose not to participate and the board couldn't work effectively even though it was on the road. One of the things that I want to do that sets me apart from my peers is that I want to have office hours, at least monthly, if not bi-weekly, out in the community. So people can know where I am. They don't have to come to a select board meeting to speak with me, whether it's Scott's in his office in Camelot Park from noon to 2 today, if you want to come and see him. That's where my law office is. If you want to come and have a cup of coffee with me, I'll be at the Blueberry Muffin in Cedarville from 1 to 3. And to go out and actually engage the people, because people don't have faith in their government because their government is reactive. And unless somebody calls and pesters their representatives or town hall, it seems like it's an endless red tape. So what I want to do is go out into the community, seek out people, seek out their input. Like I have a lot of great ideas on how to make our community better, but other people have great ideas. And many of the ideas that I've adopted in this campaign weren't mine to start with. Somebody brought them up to me. When I ran for a select board last year, somebody brought up the animal shelter and how we needed a new animal shelter. And I said, you're right, that thing's almost 50 years old. We should do something with that. Same with the landfill gas to electric proposal. Somebody sent that to me and said Washington County Co-op is making electricity for 40,000 homes based on landfill gases that we're venting into the atmosphere and creating greenhouse gases with. So other people have the answers. You know what I mean? And recognizing that you're not the smartest person in the room is probably one of the biggest characteristics of a good leader. Somebody that seeks out input, somebody that adopts the input. And that's what I want to do. Going on the road with the town hall is great, but I also want to go out on my own. Thank you.
Okay. So you all feel it's beneficial to hear from residents, absolutely. The timeliness of it and the fact that sometimes what you learn has to be put on the agenda, which adds so much more time to the already agendas that seem to be stacked. And I'm going to give you each like 15 seconds to answer this. Is there a way to make the select board meetings shorter? Let's start with Scott.
Yes,
15, 20 seconds. Go ahead.
Prioritization
Of
the agenda. Like I said, making sure that you're dealing with it is important. People lose focus. Even the people watching this debate will give up after about an hour or so. So if we're going to be here for a couple hours, we need to make sure we've prioritized our agenda and it's applicable to what we're doing.
Okay. Betty?
Yes, of course, we can, there's a lot of talking going on, and there's a lot of talking and talking and talking. So I think that, board members need to figure out, this is the agenda. I remember I used to tease John Mahoney all the time that he was in his time machine and I didn't want to go for that ride. But I think, we need to stick to the subject and just kind of, there are studies shown after 90 minutes, everybody loses
Checks out.
interest.
Yeah.
So,
Kevin?
So people complain about the length, but I don't know if people are like court ordered to watch us, but it's really about trying to conduct the town's business. So if it takes longer to do it because we have more going on, this is a community of 65,000 people that's adding 750 to 1,000 people a year with urban, suburban, and rural areas that you can be on the highway at highway speeds for over 20 minutes. So yeah, sometimes it takes a bit to deal with the issues of the week. And I think that that's not necessarily a negative thing. I think that some meetings are more effective than others, but I don't think it's a result of their length per se. I think that we shouldn't be preoccupied by how long. We're trying to get the town's business done, not trying to catch a flight.
Okay, thank you. And that's actually a great segue into the existing form of government. The Mass Municipal Association recommends that once a town reaches a population of 35,000 people, they consider switching to a city form of government. The reason they suggest this is they believe it may be a better fit for the needs of a community that size. Plymouth is now almost double that number. The voters ultimately will decide if they want to consider an alternate form of government. And voters, you need to understand that this is always going to be up to you. Before we get into specifics, okay, and you're all going to be able to say your specifics of how you feel about the subject, how many of you personally believe that Plymouth has outgrown its current form of representative town meeting governance? Show of hands if you think we have outgrown the form of government. All three of you. Okay, excellent. Now, a group recently filed with the town clerk establishing itself a ballot question committee. They call themselves Yes on Charter Change. Their goal is to get a question on the 2027 town election ballot asking voters to create such a charter commission, which would study all the options and ultimately make recommendations to the voters who would then decide. This is obviously a multi-year process. This does not happen overnight. So please, I want you to let the voters know specifically why you are in support of looking at a different form of government. We're going to go Kevin and then Scott and then Betty.
Sure. So I think this, being a select board member will take as much time as you're willing to give it, willing and able to give it. And I think that the town could get better results from full-time government. I think that while we have this form of government, it needs to work as well as it can. And I have committed, and always will be committed, to trying to make that a reality. You know, when prior to this past year, we used to take the summers half off. And that's when we started doing On the Roads. It was when we weren't here on a Tuesday. We might as well be in Cedarville or South Elementary, listening to people and trying to address their issues. But there's only so much you can do with this form of government, with a legislature that meets twice a year, that is not able to compete with private interests that have a 365-day-a-year calendar. That when something goes to town meeting, if it doesn't pass, it can't be just brought up at the next town meeting. It has to start the whole process all over again, which can be very time-consuming. And where if you had a town council, you could work things through. If it wasn't ready for prime time this week, you could bring it up in 3, 5, 6 weeks and iterate on that thing and make progress in that way. I think that the town could get more bang for its buck out of its government if you did have full-time government. I think that that would allow us to be more responsive and to be more be more proactive rather than reactive. I think that we are constantly behind the 8 ball on things. Some things in our control that we should be more on top of, and some things that are happening in the community that the structures of our government are just not able for us to adequately exist. But while we have this form of government, I am and always will be committed to making it work the best way that it can.
Okay. Scott.
Well, I was elected to the last Charter Commission, and like I said, we sat here for 2 years. And initially, there was people ran on slates, and there was a slate that was pro-town meeting, and there was a slate that was pro-mayoral. I didn't align with either slate because I wanted to objectively evaluate. I leaned mayoral, but I wanted to objectively evaluate any changes that were coming up without committing myself to only one path. We were sitting in this room, I was actually sitting down the end there, and the town meeting people brought up an issue called electable but incompetent. Electable but incompetent.
Okay.
Electable to the position, but not competent of handling that job. While we were having this discussion, it was actually it was either David Peck or Larry Pizer that brought it up, and Betty zoomed in on the TV over there and gave her speech. We all sat quietly and listened to her, whatever she had to say, but she forgot to mute her mic at the end, and then she proceeded to call Frank Manda jackass and some other unkind things, and kind of made the point for him and pretty much sunk the ship of the mayoral argument at that point. From there, we kind of looked at a few other things. One of the things that I wanted to do was revamp town meeting, bring it down to a couple of elected officials per precinct and have them meet at least quarterly, if not monthly. And that didn't fly with the other group. So we moved on to, I was trying to get us to have a third town meeting. And like I said, it was like pulling teeth. And we still have 2 town meetings because of what came out of that thing. So I spent 2 years sitting here trying to fix our government. I've been through the charter line by line by line twice, once in the charter committee, which was advisory, and once as an elected. And if we're going to keep town meeting, we have to meet more frequently and it has to be more effective.
Okay.
Thank you.
Betty?
I'm going to take the high road right now because I really don't feel like doing that. But town meeting, we have to take care of a $350 million budget. And I think, like what Kevin said, we're dealing with people that are working on a 365-day when it's going to take us 6 months. And when you really think about it, as soon as our town meetings are done, like the next week, our staff is getting ready for the next town meeting. So they're always in that town meeting crunch. So I don't think that's a good way to do business. And we are reactive because we don't have time to be proactive, because if we don't do this now, it's not going to get on town meeting, it's not going to get on the docket, it's not going to get on the agenda. So we have way too many irons in the fire, and with a $350 million budget, that we can't wait 6 months. I love town meeting. I love the debate of town meeting, but it really, it does this town an injustice because we really can't do what we should be doing.
Okay, thank you. So I think you all agree that the major proponents for changing the form of government is the fact that the form we have now just cannot be react quickly enough to the multiple of things that come up. Now, the last time there was a charter commission, they did not vote to change. They didn't vote to change the form of government, but they made some tweaks in it. Can you, in one sentence, tell us what the tweaks were that were made, Scott?
Most of them are minor changes. I can't really list them all right now. I know I was an advocate for a lot larger of changes that occurred, but most of them were just kind of housekeeping cleanups.
Okay. Betty?
So I don't know if this was in the charter or if it was the one that we did after that committee. But we did take out specific job descriptions because we only had a couple in there, and we felt that that was rather discriminatory. So, because if you're going to put one job description in there, you might as well put them all.
Okay. So that was done. Kevin?
Yeah, so the Charter Commission report from 3 years ago, that was either yes or no, and if it was either all of it or none of it, so
Yeah.
none of it won. And then there was the Charter Review Committee that
Right.
did
Sorry.
make the committee, the recommendations that passed largely did make the charter not an HR manual, and removed some, but not all of the bureaucracy that existed for the purposes of the expanding bureaucracy.
Okay.
So it was just sort of a tweaking.
Housekeeping,
It was kind of
yeah.
moving the deck chairs around.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The next subject we're going to talk about is commercial development. You've all cited the need for a balanced approach to commercial development. The optimum commercial development for Plymouth would be a business or entity that brings in a great amount of tax revenue, uses relatively small amounts of services in comparison to how much tax revenue it brings in, offers well-paying jobs, and does not negatively affect the environment. And of course, there's a few other things. But would you all agree that those are definite factors? Okay, that's what the town wants. So what is the potential business that comes here want? Well, we know from hearing from a lot of them, they want shovel-ready land. They want a site with existing water and sewer infrastructure. They want housing for the jobs that are being created or recruited. They want available workforce to train. They want public transportation for inbound commuting. And though there could be business-specific things or requirements that they want, would you all agree that those are kind of the things that companies are asking for when they look to Plymouth? Okay, so I'm not off base there. Okay. So given the fact that there is a limited amount of land currently zoned and available for commercial or light industrial business, what specific industries or companies would you try to recruit? And we're going to do Betty and then Kevin and then Scott.
So one of the things that we've had great success with, and we see them popping up, is medical. And when I was at the local scene doing my little interview, Melissa Matinzi and I started having a discussion, and she's like, wouldn't it be great to like bring the Children's Hospital, get a satellite that come down here at the Dana-Farber? And you know what? I think that would be a great beginning, because we have a lot of places that I believe that we could put medical, but we do have to change the zoning, because these companies, they don't want to go out, they want to go up. So, and they can fit much more in a vertical building. So I think for the short term, we got to invite those people down here and see if we could do something. But in the long term, and I know it's a hot topic, but right now, our governor has changed her position on nuclear power.
We'll have a whole discussion about that.
Good.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
The one thing you said, you mentioned medical
Right.
coming down. Is there a cost involved to the town to kind of flirt with these companies and say, come on down, we want you to be with us?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to do is to say, is this something that there could be added on to a specific building or something like that? But I think that there's always going to be a cost.
Yeah.
But actually, I think to get people here, we should offer tax incentives, like, something reduced for the first year that they're here or first couple years, but make them stay, 6 or 7 years to offset that tax incentive.
Okay. Kevin?
Sure. So I think as part of the master plan committee that just completed what is now the comprehensive plan, changed the name of the document, but not the committee that made it, we discovered that over 70% of the people that live in Plymouth commute to work outside of Plymouth in order to be able to afford to live here. Over 70% of the people that work in Plymouth commute from outside of Plymouth to their jobs here. So you can either live in Plymouth or you can work in Plymouth, but for many, many people, you can't do both. And that's not a sustainable recipe for a community. I think we need more jobs in a variety of fields. I think we need more vocational jobs in trades. Carpenters, electricians, plumbers are the backbone of any local economy. We have vocational schools in this community already that could be feeders for that as well. I think we need more white-collar professional jobs that pay a good wage to the people that work in them, but also provide services that our population needs. And also, we should be leveraging, now that it's not Jordan Hospital, it's Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, we should be leveraging that relationship to attract more medical and biotech jobs to this community that also provide good paying jobs for the people that work in them and good wages for those that, and rather good services for the people that consume them. Over 40% of Plymouth is 55 years and older. And that is the fastest growing demographic in our community. So the need for medical services in this community is only going to expand in the years to come as the existing population ages and as more people that are aging are coming into the community. So having that, there's a customer base already coming here and already here that we can use to attract that and provide the services and provide the jobs. We can bring, I think we should have in-house economic development pursuing these types of opportunities as well in the planning department.
Okay, and I asked for specific industries or companies that you try to recruit. You kind of gave the categories of companies. So I'm going to ask all of you, and I'll get to you in 1 second, Scott. I'm going to ask all of you as a follow-up to give me an example of a company that you would want to bring here and what it would cost the town to get them here. What is the trade-off? Because nothing is free. So, and voters might want to say, okay, you think you want to bring the trades. That's great. You're right. You can't get a plumber when you call for a plumber because they're all busy. So what does that look like? What is the plan? How do you do it? How much is it going to bring in? And how much does it cost? So I'm going to do a follow-up on that. So I segued away. Oops, sorry. Scott, you may answer the question.
Thank you. One of the things that we really have to focus on is that Plymouth has a reputation as very anti-business friendly. I don't know if you know, but I owned and operated a small business in the town for almost 15 years, Mayflower Taxi. And I was very successful. The driver of a taxi was rude, then that's me on, that should be addressing the issue, not the town telling me how to address that issue. And that's carried over with many other things. The Independence Mall was supposed to be in Plymouth. And Plymouth acted anti-business friendly, and it's in Kingston. Granted, it's past its prime at this time and slowly converting to housing. But back then, the Cottage Park was a mall. And I used to work there as a kid in the Army Navy store. But that's the most of our problem is that our reputation is anti-business friendly. And that's why when anybody comes here, Cisco was supposed to be in Plymouth. Cisco's in Plimpton because Plimpton said, yeah, come on to Plimpton, we'll do whatever you want. What do we have to offer? Usually it's just tax incentives. But I think just the attitude and the right off the bat, if they come in and they don't get a warm fuzzy that this is going to be a good thing for them, then they're going to look to another community. Biotech's good, but biotech's in Cambridge. It's not coming out of Cambridge. Light industrial is the way to go. If you look to the industrial park, some of the manufacturing stuff that's up there, Tech Etch has been there forever. Light industrial uses less services but provides more taxes. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to let you do the follow-up. But for economic development, it's going to be crucial that the select board focuses on policy, correct? You have to set policy. Okay, so based on that and based on the fact that the voters want to know specifically what industries are you going to try to bring in here, and what's your plan to do it? Where's your deck page? Sorry. Where's your presentation? And what's it going to cost? Do any of you have that fleshed out at this point? And we'll start again with Betty.
I mean, I have some of it fleshed out. I mean, like I said, medical, biotech, BID.
Is it somewhere where voters can see it? Like this is my vision. This is what it could bring.
I have some stuff out there, but it's funny because as you get to go through all these and you end up talking with people at the end of the forum, they bring you ideas and they say, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. So if it's not out there, it will be out there sometime tomorrow.
Okay.
But I think that I think it's important that you go around and you benchmark all these successful places so you can bring that knowledge back here.
Okay. Kevin?
Sure. So in terms of bringing in more medical and biotech, we had Beth Israel Deaconess into a select board meeting a few months ago. We talked about the challenges because I think they obviously have a significant campus up in Boston already. They already and they're well known and well renowned, and we have a number of feeder institutions that are constantly generating new medical professionals that are looking for work. It would, I think, by having further conversations like we did there, which we started talking about their needs, one of their needs is housing for their employees, workforce housing. We are in the process of bringing on board some of that in the community right now on Obery Street, but having more of that to provide to their travelers and to their like interns and residents that are just getting started would make it easier for them to expand their presence down here, because it's cheaper for them to expand their Plymouth campus than it is their Longwood campus for a number of reasons. But we need to provide that infrastructure to do it. I think having in terms of that housing, depending on the qualifications for it, we could use the CPA or Affordable Housing Trust money for some of that. We could also, I think, in terms of having in-house economic development as a liaison, as I mentioned in my earlier response, you're probably looking at a high 5, low 6-figure salary for that, plus some marketing materials and things of that nature. So that'd be your expenses for that, for targeting that. And it wouldn't just be medical and biotech that they would target. They would target those other things that I talked to as well.
Okay.
And then obviously the vocational, the trades, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, that's more about having zoning changes, either overlay districts, so that we can make better use of the existing land that we've identified for commercial and light industrial than we currently are, because there's our industrial park has 2 schools, 2 gyms in it.
Okay.
Not the best
So
use.
again, just like I asked Betty, is there one place that voters can go and see, okay, Kevin has an idea about this, or this, or this, and these are kind of all the parameters that we would have to go through to get there?
Well, I would encourage members of the public to watch select board meetings where we're actively talking about all of this.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Scott?
I think that to answer the specific question, no, I do not have a laundry list of businesses that I am actively trying to attract. I think it's one of the things we need to realize is the government can't make anybody do anything in our town. We have to provide a welcoming environment and provide working with these businesses. I know somebody I'm actually friendly with reached out to me and was asking me questions. He was looking to put a data center somewhere. And he started asking me about the infrastructure of the town. So there are different things. Data centers have their own host of issues that would have to be worked through. But there are things that we can do to attract businesses. But, as far as going up to BID and saying, hey, we want you to put a campus in our town, that's entirely up to BID. That, we can be attractive to these businesses. And again, light industrial, small businesses, that's where really you make your money. Small businesses and union jobs reinvest their money in the town. So if you have, plumbers or electricians that are union plumbers and electricians, they usually live in the community. They go out to dinner in the community. They reinvest the money they make in our community. And that's really what we need to look at is being friendly to those types of businesses. But do I have one specific type of business? No, I don't. My issues are very clearly listed on my website.
Okay.
And I do have 3 revenue streams, non-taxes, that I want to bring
Okay.
to the town of Plymouth. But like I said, being open and welcoming, I think, as a town is the most important part of that.
Okay. Data centers was a question. A lot of people are wondering, will a data center ever come to Plymouth? Now, data centers obviously don't employ a lot of people. They are a huge drain on an electrical grid, but they don't take a lot of services, but they pay a lot in taxes. So, Scott and then Betty and then Kevin, just yes or no, would you be in favor of exploring the possibility of a data center coming to Plymouth?
I heard it from the audience, water being the primary issue. And right now, we have to look at our wells and what capacity. And when a person broached that argument to me, I was like, I don't know. I've heard a lot about them using a lot of water, which is a precious resource. Our aquifers are fragile. So would I be open to exploring it? Yes, I would very much want to know what the environmental impacts were, what the impacts on water. I was later informed that it's a closed system. So once it doesn't continuously suck, it's a closed system that cools.
So you'd be interested in,
I would be interested in exploring it.
Okay.
But I think that the community would have to have a lot of input.
okay, Betty?
I also would be interested in exploring it. And then when I was in office, we actually had conversations amongst board members because someone was thinking about a data center on the Powerhouse Road down by the nuclear plant. It never really came to fruition, but And I don't necessarily agree that that would be the place to put it, because it's right in the middle of a neighborhood. And I don't think we want to do anything like that, so, but I would be interested, I'd want to hear the pros and cons of it all.
Okay, Kevin?
So I don't think there's any harm in looking at the pros and cons, but there are significant environmental concerns. There's also, it would increase the drain on the electric grid, increase the drain, and maybe it would help people on their tax bills, but if it hurts them on their electric bills, have they really come out ahead? Also, a large number of data centers that have been planned in the United States have been canceled because they're overexpanding in certain areas. So I think the town needs to move away from these like one big wonder solutions, whether it's Hollywood East or a racetrack or nuclear power or a data center. I think we need a diverse commercial tax base that we can start implementing today, not waiting for some magical wonder thing to come in and solve all of our problems in one fell swoop. I think that's a lot more practical, realistic, and comprehensive.
Okay, thank you. And speaking of small modular reactors, let's talk about the future of nuclear energy as potentially located in Plymouth. The governor has stressed the need for renewable energy in Massachusetts at levels that cannot be achieved if nuclear power is not included. Given the new technologies that are available and currently being tested and utilized elsewhere, should Plymouth be engaging in serious discussions regarding the potential for new nuclear power generation at the Holtec site? And this is to start off with a yes or a no. Scott?
Yes, and I can expand?
No, not yet. So you're yes.
Yes.
Betty?
Yes,
Yes. Kevin?
No.
Okay, no. All right. So the possibility of the small modular reactors at the Holtec site is at best in the distant future. In the near future, what can be done to address concerns about the viability of developing that 1,600-acre site, both for the next few years and looking 5 to 10 years down the road? And since you were a no, why don't we start with you?
A nuclear reactor in this community. A lot of people were happy when Pilgrim closed. I understand that there's an economic benefit to having it. It was a big taxpayer in the town. It provided a lot of jobs. It bought like $40,000 in pizza a year alone, so it had knock-on effects in the larger economy. However, there are other things that we can do to improve our economic base in this community, and there are a lot of unanswered questions about nuclear power. And it is also something that even if we were to start today, it wouldn't be there for 10 plus years. So it is, again, these wonder solutions that are going to swoop in and solve all of our problems are not realistic. We need realistic on-the-ground solutions to move Plymouth forward. That's what I advocate for. Having conversations about things, looking into things, whether it's a data center or nuclear in the abstract is one thing, but it would, at a minimum, require a townwide vote before we proceeded on something like that. And I think you're going to have a lot of pushback for new nuclear in this community.
Okay. Scott?
I've said it a couple of times. If they were to give us the Pilgrim 1,600, build us a new police and fire headquarters, and give every resident of the town of Plymouth discounted electricity, they could put one in my living room. But that's Scott's opinion, right? If I'm elected to the select board, my job is to represent my constituents and what my constituents want. Nuclear power is at best a 2032 issue. I've spoken with several people about it, and there's going to be no revenue that's going to come out of that for at least 10 years, if not further than that. What we need to do right now is focus on the fiscal cliff that's approaching, get our house in order, conduct a complete audit of the town of Plymouth from top to bottom by the Office of the State Auditor, and then go through our budget line item by line item by line item to make our budget as lean and as effective as possible. That's going to solve our near-term problems while we flesh out these bigger picture, and maybe 10 years down the road, nuclear power comes, maybe it doesn't, address what's in front of us.
Okay. Betty, again, this is just about nuclear power.
so I actually have a different opinion. I mean, to be honest, I worked there for 30 years. And it is clean energy, and everybody, not just Massachusetts, everybody has gotten into these new renewed, we need to bring in nuclear. Connecticut Yankee is going back up online. Sorry.
Go, lean in.
Connecticut Yankee is back up, or going back up online. You know, when I was there, we had plans for Pilgrim 1, 2, and 3. And we may not get a tax benefit from the actual company themselves, but to rebuild and retrofit everything will bring in jobs, and they're all high-paying union jobs. I don't think they're going anywhere because they have invested a lot of money in the switchyard, which has been recently. So I think that, of course, it will be a ballot question and people can, you know, do what they want. But I don't think there's as much people against it as there is for it. So we don't have enough land, ocean, solar. We just don't have enough of that. And it's never going to be able to power anything that our needs are not going to get met. So I am all into, you know, great, we can look at it. I think an SMR, one SMR is about, takes out like 300 megawatt. Pilgrim was 650, maybe 7 on a good day. And that was a significant tax revenue that the town collected, but also
Okay, so I'm sure a lot more will, you talked about this subject moving forward, and you all agree that no matter what happens, it's not going to happen overnight. This is something that is years and years and years down the road. Okay, let's move on to the next subject, which is budgeting and the fiscal cliff. At the April 7th Select Board meeting, Lynn Barrett, Plymouth's Director of Finance, shared a 5-year budget forecast which revealed a $2 million deficit for 2027, and that deficit growing to over $14 million by 2032. Town meeting declined to make any cuts to the budget, clearly signaling that if cuts were going to be made, it would have to be made prior to town meeting. The budget goes through the Select Board. Now, motions were made to pare down the budget. They were presented and ultimately failed to garner the necessary votes at town meeting. So let's talk about how all this happened. What is the best fiscal plan to head off these potential deficits in the next few years? And should we be concentrating more on increasing revenue sources or decreasing operational and capital expenses? Which option would bring us the fastest results? And I know there's a lot packed into that. But really, it's a question of what do we take in and what do we spend, and how do we make it work? So let's start with Betty, and then we're going to go to Scott, and then to Kevin.
So I did not support the 1% cut on town meeting floor because it was too sudden. We weren't prepared for it. You know, the school committee was separate, so we would have had to take the brunt. It would be services, you know, but one of the things that myself and our other board, Mr. Quintal and the rest of them, we were very successful with negotiations. So our last PEC agreement, which is healthcare, we saved over $20 million. And that's a big savings. And I think that those are the things that we have to move forward to, but we have to do it honestly. We have to negotiate with unions. We have to be, they won't negotiate the way we'd like to negotiate if they don't trust somebody. So that last negotiation, it went great. We walked in there, this is what we got, what do you guys think? And we worked collaboratively. And that $20 million for healthcare would have been something that all of us would have had to pay, but it also put a $200 million dent in OPEB, which is the other
Post-employment benefits.
Yeah. So
that 20 million was over 10 years, correct?
no, it's been 4
20
years.
million a year?
Yep. No, it's cumulative. It's been 4 years, 3
Okay.
years.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Scott.
So the 1% cut wasn't sudden to town meeting. The 1% cut, we had a joint meeting of the Finance Committee, of which I'm a member, Advisory Finance, proper name, but Finance Committee, School Committee, Select Board. And the town manager came in and said, we need to cut $1.5 million out of the budget before it goes to town meeting. Luckily, I was home and remote because nobody could hear me screaming at my computer when the select board only made $28,000 in cuts. And we came nowhere, the school committee chose not to participate, and the select board failed to make any significant cuts. So then that meeting ended. It was 4 hours of my life that I'll never get back because we didn't really accomplish anything. And then it goes on and people start bringing up these at town meeting. Well, now we want to go back for the 1% cuts. So the 1% cuts weren't new before they got to town meeting. They actually, every department head came in and presented what they thought that their 1% would be, and the select board failed to make any meaningful cuts. So those plans were already in place. So then you fast forward to town meeting, a group of fiscally responsible people tries to reinstate the 1% cut. Our budget is in crisis. And if you look at that meeting from the 7th, where Lynn Barrett proposed, her things, if you go towards the end where David Golden starts questioning this, each select board member is giving some commentary, and he brings out the fact that those are best case scenario. Not only is it a best case scenario, but it shows that the budget that starts when July 1st of 27 is already $1.5 million in the hole. So now you look at this in a big picture. So with the 1% cuts weren't there. The problem is you can't ask a department head, give me a 1% cut. That's like asking somebody to perform surgery on themselves. Nobody wants to make that cut very deep. Like I said, it has to be a collaborative effort where people sit down, each department head comes in, and we start going through the line items, line item by line item by line item. Explain your budget to me like I'm 3.
Okay. Kevin?
Sure. So just to clarify, the town manager did not come in and say we need to make a 1% cut. The select board made a request that a 1% cut be presented as an option. And we examined that. We went through each department line by line of what, if we did want to do a 1% cut spread amongst the departments, what that would look like. And you saw that line by line analysis of what we could responsibly cut and what we could not. And the reason that many of those cuts were not supported is not because the select board was being fiscally irresponsible. It's because we were being responsible to our residents that depend on the services that our community provides. No resident depends on every service that our town provides, but every service is dependent upon by at least one resident. And all of the services are dependent on by many residents in our community. You may not have kids in school, but plenty do. You may never call the police this year, but you might. You may not need fire protection this year, but you might. You're going to drive on our roads. You're going to need this, that, the other thing. Those services are things that people depend upon. And picking an arbitrary number and just adhering to it like it's gospel is not being fiscally responsible. It is being arbitrary. So we did our due diligence in looking at what we could afford to do. We have created a new process to have more time because that cut was presented at the 11th hour for the select board. And the new process will allow the board to go into more depth prior to turning the budget over to the Advisory and Finance Committee, which was the purpose of that joint meeting that we had, so that we, if cuts can be made and reductions can be made, we can exercise them with deliberation and intention and in a responsible manner. And in terms of your core question, we should be looking to both be responsible to how we're spending money and bring in new revenue at the same time. It is not mutually exclusive. We need to be able to chew gum and walk. Thank you.
Okay. At the WATD forum that was held on April 23rd, your candidates were asked a lightning round question about Proposition 2.5. The question was, should Proposition 2.5 law be kept as it is, modified, or dissolved completely? Scott, Dick, and Betty said it should be kept the same, and Kevin, you said it should be modified, if I listened correctly, and I think I did. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to address the voters with your thoughts on this. And Proposition 2.5, if I'm correct, is property taxes can go up as much as 2.5% per year. Is that correct? Okay. They can't go above 2.5%, or an override has to be approved by the voters. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
You're not, okay. Could you
So
correct me?
it's 2.5%. New growth is a factor in that.
Okay.
So if you have new growth, it can increase by more than that. But the concern that Plymouth is having is our new growth is going to be slowing down in the coming years. So then we're going to be left with other sources of revenue, such as state aid, which is why we moved town meeting from the April to the May date, because new revenue sources are separate from that. So the two,
So that was your point about you wanted to modify it.
well, that's a component of it. There's also the fact, like, if you look at a town like Duxbury, they are looking to pass Proposition 2.5 overrides like they're baking cookies. They're doing it in batches. They're trying to do 5 years at a time last year and 3 years at a time this time. That doesn't make any sense. If you're going to have an override, it should be on a case-by-case basis, should be able to do it in lumps. So, you know, but the mechanics of 2.5 are complicated.
Okay. Betty?
So I don't believe that this town would ever pass an operational override. I wouldn't support it, because if that's where we're at, then we got to tighten our belts. It's just like being at home and all of a sudden you're $1,000 less than what you remember. So I would never support an operational override. And that doesn't include, like, if we're going to build a new school, or, you know, what those things are. But I don't, you know, it gets to the point where you're almost afraid if someone wants to modify a Prop 2.5, that means they want to change it and we're going to be paying more money. And I don't care who you are, that's what you think. So I'd say leave it now.
You say keep it the same. Scott?
Last year, when I ran for the select board, I started talking about a possible Prop 2.5 override and how adamantly opposed I was to it. And everybody looked at me like the boy who cried wolf. But here we are a year later, and it's staring us in the face. The central part of my campaign is no override. The people will not pass it. The people who live here cannot afford it. And if we don't prepare to do something else besides that, we're going to crash right off the fiscal cliff, and we're going to wind up laying off police, fire, and teachers. And that is something that we cannot do. If you remember back to the early 90s, I do, when I came back from the Marines and I was trying to get a job and we were in a bad recession, and all the communities around us were laying off police, fire, and teachers. Fortunately, Plymouth didn't have to do that. And that's something that we have to realize, that if we don't act fiscally responsible and plan for our finances without an override, no override, I will not support one, I will be adamantly vocal against one, we need to take care of our budget. These budgets, when we come in and capital outlays with nice to haves, need to stop. We're in a need to have environment. And we need to make sure that every dime in our budget is necessary and being spent appropriately. The guy that was stealing from the high school for what, 10 years? And nobody said anything. So my question is, well, what else could we find? That's why I want the state auditor to come in and conduct a top to bottom audit of the entire town of Plymouth and anything that the town of Plymouth's funds touch, whether it's PDGC, Park Plymouth, or, any of that stuff that has to do with our funds. Before you ask our taxpayers for another dime of their money, justify what you're doing with the money they're already giving you. And that is something that I am adamant about. And hopefully when I'm elected, and I feel pretty good about it, on the 16th, that next meeting, under new business, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to make a motion that we have the state auditor audit the town.
Okay, and I will ask you, as a follow-up, to tell me how much would an audit cost the town to do a line-by-line audit on all the budgets?
That's, I broached the question with the auditor's office about the mechanism to request one. And obviously, I need to be elected to continue pushing for that. So after the 16th, my follow-up email to the state auditors will be that question exactly, if they can give me a ballpark idea, because if I make a motion at a select board meeting and I don't have an estimated figure, then it's not really going to go too far. But if there was ever an argument that a good use of free cash for a one-time expense is an audit, it is, because God knows what else you'll uncover.
Can you audit line by line the school committee or just the total?
I have to relook at the state law, but it has to pass. The first step is for the select board to vote in favor of it. The second is for town meeting to vote in favor of it.
Okay.
And once town meeting votes in favor of it, then you can actually talk to the auditor and have them come in and do it. But an estimated dollar amount would be necessary for all of those processes. And again, it's not something that I'm in a position to really,
Okay, do
have
right
the
now.
auditor
Okay.
spend time doing.
Betty, you shook your head.
Yeah, we can't do anything like that with the school. That's their budget. And we have broached, so we are audited every year. Lynn comes to us and she's a good financial director and has been for many years. And it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do an audit, like what he's suggesting. So, I like when I became a selectman, I wanted the selectmen to be in those different groups that oversee, like FinCom would go and they'd be with the school and they'd be with that. I think that's more important, that selectmen are on that ground level. And I think we could find savings there, and my understanding is, if you're asking for an audit of your town and it is not covered in what our normal audits go, they say that it's a forensic audit.
Right.
And for a forensic audit, there has to be something nefarious. So, I mean, we've asked before.
Does Lynn, when you say Lynn audits you every year, does she find money? Does she find mistakes? Does she find overages and shortages?
Yeah.
And what do you do about those things?
Well, I mean, there was a mistake when they did the budget, and all of a sudden now we're short. So it was a
It's a
calculation mistake.
calculation error, yeah, okay.
You know,
Okay.
so, but if it's something that it's usually, my experience has usually been, it's more in our favor than not.
Then not, okay. Kevin?
Well, yeah, the town we're in the process of trying to find a new external auditor, but that's been a long-term practice of the community. I was on the Advisory and Finance Committee for 9 years. And in terms of, as Betty mentioned, on the ground, that the budget subcommittee process that the FinCom does, they break into groups of 3 to 5 members, talk to all the department or division heads in a given area of the budget, go through line by line all the items, including on the school committee side, and then make a recommendation to town meeting about how the FinCom, believe that town meeting should vote on that budget. And they can make adjustments as they choose. So the process that the select board has now implemented will allow a version of that to occur at the select board level. We will have 1 or 2 department or division head sets come in per meeting in November and December. We just talked about this past Tuesday, to give us that level of detail.
So you're going to kind of do it ongoing?
Yes, and a justification of the increases, and we talked about doing a level service budget, a level funded budget, and then like a 2% increase budget.
Okay.
So that we can do like a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B as we're going through it and make an informed decision about the budget we pass off to the FinCom.
Okay.
So before a budget subcommittee is even formed by the FinCom, that level of review will happen at the select board level.
Got it. And one other thing on budgets, this was sent in by a viewer, a fairly recent presentation. The chiefs of fire and police provided data indicating that calls are soaring and wait times for services may increase. How do we propose to support those departments and keep residents safe? Well, all of you kind of said cutting services is something we cannot do. We can't cut fire and police. We just can't. And every department will say, well, you can't cut my department because, to Kevin's point, at least one person takes advantage of some service, and oftentimes many residents do. So how important is the fire, police, the emergency management, let's say, overall, to keep that funding never in jeopardy? Start with Scott. And let's just do a minute on this one.
Okay, I just had something real quick for redirect. That's why I kind of had my hand up on. So
sorry.
I'm actually on the audit subcommittee, and we found out that we can't audit anything because we don't have a budget. And the audit that is conducted for the town just makes sure the books are balanced. There is no real deep dive into that stuff. I know because I sat there and we interviewed companies for it. The other part that there's no requirement of nefarious anything. There's a state law that says how you request an audit. So I just wanted to clarify those 3 points. But police, fire, and EMS and emergency management is you can't state how important that is. I currently work part-time in EMS, and we do some 911 service, not in Plymouth, but in another community. And when they roll up, they want you there quick. One of my proposals is actually for us to take over our own ambulance as an enterprise fund based on the Fall River model, which would exponentially increase that level of public safety. One of the ways that you can deal with the call volume is you don't need a ladder truck to respond to every car accident. All right, you don't need a police officer to show up at every.
Okay, we're just doing 1 minute on this.
Okay. There are calls that you can prioritize that people could actually come into the station. So the call volume is, while there's numbers there's ways to deal with that.
Okay. Betty? Police, fire?
Well, never mind police and fire, DPW. I mean, they're the ones, you've seen the work that they've done. This blizzard that we had, it was a monstrosity. And you know what? We didn't have enough people. And it was difficult for them to clear. And those guys, they're working night and day, night and day, night and day. They probably didn't go home for 3 days.
Right.
So if we're going to cut departments and you want to go to DPW, you better stay home.
Okay.
So,
Kevin?
Well, to begin with, I think the idea of you call the police or the fire department and say, could you come to me? And you say, no, you got to come to us, is an odd way to balance the budget. I think that if people call emergency services, they want them to come to them and they need them to come to them, and we should implement that. But there are other ways, there's the SAFER grant that we used a number of years ago to onboard additional firefighters. It pays for a percentage that titrates down over time and makes it easier for the community to absorb. And there are other ways to increase our public safety staffing, like removing the town from civil service, which we tried last year, but wasn't successful because it wasn't socialized and educated to the populace and the voters, and they actually didn't understand it. That's on the town. That's the town's fault for not doing that. But we need to prioritize all the services that we can so that people that depend on them can have those benefits when they need them. But there's creative ways to fund these types of things, whether it be grants, whether it be looking at efficiencies. There are many options to maintain our level of services despite our financial challenges.
Okay. And Scott, just your idea about the ambulance, privatizing the ambulance service, do you have that listed somewhere on your website that shows what the income would be, what the expense would be, how long it would take? Do you have a plan, and can you show us the map?
Yeah, there's a rough plan that I put out on Facebook. If you go to my Facebook page, there's just some rough numbers. Again, I work on the ambulance, so I know a little bit from what goes on in the industry. The Fall River model uses interfacility transports. Say somebody is at Life Care and they need to go to dialysis in North Plymouth. Right. They do that, and they bill at $2,000 per trip, about. So those are the rough numbers that I was using. Okay. So
and for translating that to Plymouth, how you could make that work for Plymouth, I think is what voters would love to see.
That's that was an extensive Facebook post that I went through a lot of stuff. It is on my page if you scroll back a little bit. And again, there were rough numbers because it's a concept of using that as an enterprise fund, much like the airport does. When the airport sells tie downs, they sell gas, they lease space in hangars. And so the airport really doesn't cost the town any money, but town meeting has to approve the expenditures.
Got it.
So I would like to see that occur with our ambulance as an enterprise fund, because the enterprise funds can pay salaries, they can pay equipment, they can pay maintenance, they can pay all, it's much like the airport does.
Okay.
And if we could increase our public safety exponentially in an enterprise fund that doesn't cost us, I think it's a no-brainer.
All right. How often in the last years before this year has the FinCom or the Select Board proposed cutting school or town budgets? Kevin?
Well, there's been numerous proposed cuts of various levels throughout that time. They're often not large dollar amount cuts, but cuts are often proposed at the FinCom or select board levels. And then there are subsequent motions made on town meeting floor to make adjustments because town meeting has a responsibility in this process too. They're the ultimate ones that have control the purse strings in the community.
Okay. Betty?
Very often. When I served on the board, there was always a constant continuing, take a look at this, what do you think of that, so, I mean, any budget issues we have, they're not because of non-action, because the select board looks at those budgets pretty carefully, and, when it comes down to it, it's like, this is either going to move forward or it's not going to move forward. And it's very difficult for us to say anything to the school, because when they do go for a budget cut, we hear from the school that it's going to be teachers. And that's not what anybody is looking for. I would not support getting rid of teachers at all.
And Scott?
Like I said, as a member of FinCom, one of the things that they'll propose a line item. I have yet to see anybody specifically parse everything that's in that line item. You'll get a line item that says training and education, $873,000. Okay, well, what does that mean? And I have yet to see anybody, the select board or even the FinCom itself, say, show me your math. What gets to this? And again, I'm making up a number of $873,000 for
Yep.
whatever it is. And that's really where we need to look at to trim the fat, because like I said, department heads expect their budgets to get cut. So department heads try and insulate themselves against cuts. There's fat in that budget. There's fat that we can be fined. I know I was responsible for 2 line items when I worked at the police department. And there's not a lot, but there's a little bit of fat in those line items that I was responsible for.
Okay.
And that's where we need to surgically craft our budget to make it as lean as possible. Nobody wants to lay off teachers. Nobody wants to lay off firefighters or cops. But if we can bring our budget down, then that's where we need to be.
Okay. Any other follow-up on that? Both Kevin?
Yeah, a couple things. So first of all, an enterprise fund doesn't bring in money to the town. It funds itself. So it's supposed to be a self-sustaining, self-contained business. So you don't generate revenue off of an enterprise fund. You fund the service that the enterprise fund provides. And second of all, there is an extensive review of the budget by the FinCom that goes through the line items, up to the members that are on that budget subcommittee, what questions they ask. But there's a provision in the charter that any record of the community is accessible to FinCom members. So FinCom members have all the tools that they need to have as in-depth of analysis that they would like to have as to that budget. And I know personally that there are many FinCom members that do a rigorous analysis of the budget. So that analysis is occurring, and the reason, and I do not agree that there's a lot of fat in the budget. People think because it's a $325 million budget that there's a lot of fat in it intrinsically, but that is not the case.
Betty?
I was just going to say the same thing. When I was on FinCom, those subcommittees, we'd sit with the department heads, we'd get exactly whatever was in the $873,000 line item. So I don't know if FinCom has changed since I've been there,
Okay.
but it was always very detailed.
Okay. Let's move on to Memorial Hall. No, you know what? Let's first do the affordability of housing, or lack thereof. The average cost of a house in Plymouth is almost $700,000. Why do you believe that this is the case, and how do you create a housing strategy that is affordable to young people, families, and seniors? Also, what are the greatest factors that are driving the cost of housing, and what changes, if any, need to be made to our zoning laws to assist in the creation of truly affordable areas of land for affordable homes? I know that's a lot. Let's start with Kevin, and then we'll do Scott, and we'll do Betty.
Well, it's going to be a hell of a 2 minutes, but there's a lot of factors that drive up the cost of housing, like with anything scarcity. There's not a lot of inventory in the market right now. There's a lot of people that want to live here and not a lot of places for them to go. So when something goes on the market, it's more expensive. Supplies and materials are also up, as is gasoline, which is driving up the cost of everything in the economy right now. We have seen an explosion in house prices across the country due to the investment of private equity in the housing market. That's a big macroeconomics question that's bigger than the community of Plymouth. So we won't get into the details of that. Affordable housing, we have options to bring more truly affordable housing into the community, the CPA, the Affordable Housing Trust. The land bank that was proposed has an affordable housing component. It's currently up at Beacon Hill, needs to be refiled to make its way through there, and then it would come back to the voters in order to be voted upon. And I created a special revenue account to capture rollback taxes that will not affect affordable housing, but it will allow the community to leverage its resources that it gets through rollback taxes for open space and municipal use purchases that could be used to buy other Chapter 61 parcels that come on the market to prevent them from being built into these luxury homes that drive up the cost of housing. Will have an indirect effect on that. But we do have tools in the toolbox currently, and more tools that are on order for us to be able to address the affordability issue and as it relates to housing in Plymouth.
Okay. Scott?
The select board can't really control the housing market. And the housing market is what it is. I know I'm actually shopping for a house, and I went and looked at a 1970s ranch with electric heat, and they wanted $650,000 for it, and it actually sold in 2 showings. So split ranches, when I bought my first house on Gunner's Exchange, it paid $118,000 for it. Those days will come again no more. And as much as we like to throw buzzwords around and make affordable housing, when I was on the redevelopment authority, we actually partnered with Habitat for Humanity and built an affordable house that they do their raffles for, or whatever it is. And that's important, is like if we can partner with Habitat or someplace like that and actually build truly affordable housing. But when you look at the town and what the town can control, the housing authority controls Standish Court. That's a town's affordable housing area, right? So if we're talking about the town manufacturing this affordable housing, that's the type of model that you actually need to look at, is how do you expand on those type of town-owned communities, you know what I mean, that are for people that are truly in need. You know what I mean? I'd love to buy a house tomorrow if I could. You can't find one. I think there's only like 60 properties on the market in Plymouth right now. And the historical backstory of that is COVID. Everybody got afraid to move. Everybody got afraid to be in flux and not have a place to land. So when people aren't comfortable jumping to another house, they're not going to sell their house. So, and there's only so much unbuilt land. You know, unfortunately, that's kind of where I'm pivoting to, is looking for unbuilt land to build myself a house.
Okay.
And that's not something that's in reach for a lot of people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Granted, I'm very lucky. I'm in a different position right now. But the thing is the town can only control so much.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And part of what affordable housing is when these new developments come in, a certain percentages of them have to be reserved as affordable units.
Exactly. Betty?
So although the town can't control it, you know, we have some pretty great builders and developers in this town. And I think the communication that we have with these people, I mean, many of them know, there's a bunch of them in here tonight in the open space meeting. But, you know, when you talk to some of these builders as selectmen, and I have, and I'm like, you know, we need to get affordability. We need, you know, small homes, first-time homes, homes that are rent-to-own, and getting the people the new people coming into their first home, or the retirees that had to downsize. But I think the way we communicate with the developers is what brings this whole thing to fruition. And I think we have some of that already in place or working on that. And I think that within the next year, we're going to see some great opportunities for single-family homes, affordable, and, you know, being on the CPC, Red Brook was a big project, and they set the bar pretty high because the CPC bought the affordability of those homes. So I think there was a bunch at 30%, 60%, and then 80%. Because right now, affordable housing at 80% is not affordable.
Right.
So it should be part of our mission to speak to developers, to try to come up with a plan, to assist them into where to go, how to do it, and whatever else we can help them with, so our residents have a place to go affordably.
Okay. Any last words on that you didn't say, Kevin?
Yeah, the town shouldn't be building the houses themselves. It should be public-private partnerships with developers trying to buy additional units than they're required, so not just 10%, but 20%. We're trying to buy down the AMI. That's the way to do it. When the town builds the affordable housing itself, like the Oak Street School, it gets very expensive per unit, hundreds of thousands. It was like $300-something thousand per unit in that school. Former school. But if you give a public-private partnership, then you're just buying a deed restriction and the town just has to run the lottery process and supervise that, which is a much more efficient and effective model going forward.
So the voters can look forward to, within the next year or so, some serious plans about affordable housing based
Yes.
on.
Well, yes, now that the community has
100%.
the comprehensive plan in
Yeah.
hand, and affordability is the number one concern of the
Right.
community as demonstrated in that plan, and housing is one of the key indicators as to that. So
Right.
I think that any responsible board, regardless of who's elected, would make some movements in that direction.
Yeah, and
But
you all
certainly, if
agree
I
on
were
that?
given the opportunity, that would be a priority for me.
You all agree on that?
And if ever there was anything that needed to be audited, it's the Oak Street School. The money that was spent on that was way over budget. And when I use my example of the Standish Court and the Plymouth Housing Authority, now, I wasn't advocating for building a swath of new houses. I was using an example of that's what the town does, and that's what the town itself can do.
Okay,
The rest of it is contingent upon developers, of which we really have no control. Thank you.
okay, all right. The new comprehensive plan, which used to be called the master plan, by the way, is, it's on the town website. You can find it by going to either the planning board or the planning department tab and tabbing down, you'll see it. It's really long. So if you can't read the comprehensive plan, please at least read the executive summary, because it was a huge effort of a huge amount of people. And it really, really lays out so many answers to so many questions that voters might have that don't know about this. So appreciate all your help, anyone that had anything to do with it. We're gonna move on to Memorial Hall right now. Memorial Hall, we all know what it is. It's an aging and failing in some ways structure right now. What we're going to do with Memorial Hall, first of all, we're doing some Band-Aid patches and fixes of things that have to be done so it can be actually utilized. And there's a study that the Plymouth Economic Foundation is actually paying for that just went out to bid, request for proposal. And the study will kind of look at what is Memorial Hall? What do we have? We have this gem here. How are we utilizing it? What is its structural improvements that need to happen? What competitive advantage do we have by having this? What is the economic impact if we fix it or if we make it into something else? And what is the ideal preferred ownership or management structure of that? This study that would be done will come up with some suggestions, and they will go to town meeting, and town meeting can weigh in on them. So my question to you is, oh, and by the way, the Philharmonic just signed a 3-year lease, again, to use the Memorial Hall for their practices and their concerts, which I don't know if this would be affected by anything else that happens to that property, but right now, that's their home, and God bless them. They're a true gem for the town of Plymouth. Anyway, do you believe that Memorial Hall should be repaired, but replaced, a little of both, and how do we pay for it? Or do you envision Memorial Hall as being the convention center type venue that we had studied, the town had studied a couple years ago, and everyone said, yeah, we need a convention center here in Plymouth, but it kind of didn't go anywhere because we didn't have anyone step up to be our partner with it. So there's a lot of stuff to that question. So basically, just tell me, what do you think about the future of Memorial Hall? Let's start with Betty, and then we'll go to Scott, and then we'll go to Kevin.
So honestly, it's all going to depend on what this, person comes back and tells us that it's going to be 36 million to repair it or 56 million to take it down and make it all brand new. Now, Memorial Hall has some historical value. It really is a landing for many events that helps all our businesses and meals and drinks and, our hotels, motel tax, all that. So we benefit from all of that. I am thinking that I mean, if it's $36 million or brand new and we save whatever we can that makes it look historical still, then it might be the brand new. And quite frankly, I think the only revenue source that we could use, unless there were grants, is CPC. Because we're already paying we can't put that kind of strain on our taxpayers.
Okay. Scott?
And Memorial Hall, it's a very important part of our downtown, and it does drive the downtown economy. This Saturday night, the MMA fights are coming in. The Main will be packed, over Tavern on the Wharf will be packed, everybody will come out of the fights and filter through all the restaurants and bars downtown, and that drives our downtown economy. And, you know, maybe it's a little bit of me with the old school, when I grew up downtown, that tourism and that summer type economy was really what Plymouth depended upon every year. The problem comes to our fiscal crisis. And, you know, can we afford a new Memorial Hall right now? And the answer is no. Do we have to do some Band-Aids on it and kind of stretch it and wait until we resolve our fiscal crisis and the town's on firm fiscal footing? Yes, because debt service is a nice word for spending money you don't have. And it's not something I'm a big fan of. So to go out and spend $56 million on a brand new Memorial Hall would be great. It would be great for the town. It would be great for downtown. But that involves a debt service, which means spending money that you don't have and that you're going to pay interest on for an exponential amount of time. So what we really need to do is resolve our fiscal woes. And if that means putting some Band-Aids on Memorial Hall, then we put Band-Aids on Memorial Hall. I'm pretty sure it needs a new boiler and a few other things. And as far as the convention center, the footprint of Memorial Hall is the footprint. It's not getting any bigger. There's only so much space on that lot. So whatever happens has to fit within that footprint. But I think that, you know, potentially, you know, somewhere down the road when we can afford it, would a new one be nice? It would be great. And if we can afford it, I'd be all for it. But again, we need to resolve our fiscal crisis first before we start engaging in debt service, which isn't a word I like.
Okay. Kevin?
Sure. So the Philharmonic becoming an orchestra in residence was actually a proposal that I made and worked on with Bill Cohane. So the purpose of that was to preserve the cultural resource for the community, but also to have a relationship with them that we could leverage for fundraising and grant purposes so that we could bring in non-taxpayer dollars to fund the future of Memorial Hall. It also serves a secondary purpose of being the center for a business plan, because right now Memorial Hall has concert venues, MMA fights, stand-up comedy, pickleball. There's sometimes, I graduated from high school out of that building, you know, so it's been used for a variety of purposes, and that means that it's not really the best at any of them. So I would like to see a business plan centered around a live entertainment and concert and venue and live performances. And that way we can plan for the future of that structure with that in mind and make the best use of the structure for that purpose. This study that's being done by the foundation will tell us how to get to there and what the best way forward is. But by having this additional fundraising tool in our toolbox, we can remove some of the burden on the taxpayers. It would be very beneficial to the downtown to maintain Memorial Hall because it's not just a Plymouth asset. It's actually an asset on the South Shore. There's not a comparable facility on the South Shore to Memorial Hall. So having it there would be great, but we need to look at what makes the most business sense and how much fundraising we can get from this source through grants and through state aid for that specific purpose. I would like to see, if possible, us be able to preserve the existing structure with some modifications for that purpose, potentially leveraging CPA funds as well. But we need to have the business plan first, and then we can decide exactly what that hall looks like to be fit for purpose.
Okay. Betty? Oh, you already answered. Getting late. Okay. Thank you. Let's talk about land preservation and usage and conservation. You all attended this past weekend, a conservation candidate forum sponsored by Wildlands Trust and Plymouth Stewardship Alliance, correct? Okay. What was your biggest takeaway from this? And did you come away with any action items? And is the select board the group that actually can do anything with the action items that you came away with? Let's start with Kevin, and then we'll go to Scott, then we'll go to Betty.
Well, I think that we have known for a while that the community is very interested in open space preservation. 38% of Plymouth is in open space. The Commonwealth is looking to have municipalities have 30% of their land area in open space by 2030. So we are already ahead of that curve. But one of Plymouth's greatest assets is its natural resources, both in terms of the aesthetics of it, but also in terms of the natural benefits that it provides, our sole source aquifer and protecting that aquifer. So that continues to be an area that is of significant concern and interest in the community and is a vital asset to its future. And I do think that the select board has an important role in that in terms of our wastewater management plan, groundwater discharge plan, expanding the sewer network, because we're seeing a lot of issues with cyanobacteria blooms in all the ponds that we have in the community. And that is something that is going to take long-term planning in order to effectuate, because growing a sewer network is very expensive, very labor-intensive, and very time-consuming. So yes, I think that the select board is the right avenue to a lot of those initiatives. And there are additional things that were discussed, like the idea of having a potentially elected commission that would deal with sewer and water-related issues was brought up at that forum, and I think it's a good idea. We need a charter change in order to do that, so that's why in the interim I had suggested, well, we could make an independent group that advises us. And that would, as I said earlier in this program, that would take some of the work off of our plate and let us focus on other things as well. So it's sort of a win-win. So yeah, there are a number of action items, and there's also the concept of just being mindful of these environmental concerns and the benefit of our natural resources in all of the things that we conduct as a town. So I look forward to being able to implement those in the next term if I am given the privilege of being reelected.
Scott?
Well, my biggest takeaway from the Wildlands Trust was make sure you have the proper date and time on your calendar. So I was a little tardy, and I apologized for that.
Okay.
But one of the things I did speak to there was our wells and the encroachment that we need to limit the encroachment upon our existing wells. Our aquifer is our aquifer, and it's the only aquifer we have. And that's the most important thing right now is to protect that aquifer, because if we don't, then we'll be looking at desalinization or some other remedy down that's not that appetizing. I've always been a fan of conservation when done appropriately. Again, the CPC definitely needs to tap the brakes. They've spent a lot of money recently, and again, debt service is a nice way of saying you spent money you didn't have. So, in my opinion, the CPC needs to tap the brakes hard until they resolve their debt service. And then, like I said, strategically buying things, but we're in a need to have and not a nice to have world, because state aid's dwindling. People are moving out of Massachusetts. The state aid's going to dwindle further, and we need to be able to afford what we have. And until we resolve those issues, like I said, looking at the grand scheme of things, it's like there's a forest, but you stare at a tree. Bless you. So you can't stare at a tree and ignore the whole forest behind it. And the forest behind it is a fiscal crisis. So, but protect our aquifer, protect our lands. I don't want to revisit the disaster that is sand mining in our town. But conservation is important, done strategically and within our means.
Okay. Betty?
So one of the things we always hear about is people complaining about all the development and building, and I'm a big proponent of open space and conservation. One of the things that we spoke of is that some of our conservation land, we are not able to, like if we needed water or a well or something like that. So I think moving forward that we need to have language that it can be, sure, we can conserve this property or land or whatever it is, but, you know, we have to have the utilities that the town may require to be able to go underground or something like that. So when I was in office, that was a big issue that we discussed many times, because there were places that we wanted to do something, we couldn't because of the conservation restriction and all that. So I think the land bank is the next up and coming to help this town get to a place. I mean, think of it this way, the state thinks that we're only 50% built out. I can't even imagine what this town would look like at 100% built out.
Right.
So I think their organization really focuses on the needs that maybe it's usually in someone's peripheral, but I really appreciated that forum because you learn a lot about what people want and what people see. And it's like I want to conserve as much land, open space as possible, because that's the only thing that's going to be able to stop the overdevelopment. But you also have to think, if the state's saying we're only 50% built out and we want to keep doing, open space or conservation, we need the vehicle to do that, and that would be the land bank.
Okay. We have one more subject before we do a closing last question for you. So thank you for hanging in. Thank you, audience, also. Tourism. Okay, so Plymouth tourism has not returned to pre-pandemic levels. I think everybody knows that. What types of tourism generate revenue and how do we attract it? What are some of the obstacles in attracting visitors to Plymouth? Let's start with those two, just put them together and give it a minute and a half answer. Let's do Betty, then Kevin, then Scott.
So obviously, tourism is our biggest driver for this town. And I think that we have lost opportunities even right now. One of the things that we see is that we're having a 250th celebration up in Boston. Plymouth is big enough and on the map, is popular enough that we should be trying to bring those people here. But we don't have the setup, we don't have the people to do it. So planning and development, I think that we need to, we don't want to spend a lot of money. We need to hire an event planner. We need to bring people in to this community, and we're not doing anything. We have one of the best harbors out there. I mean, we're big boaters. We go to every harbor we can possibly find. And it's like, the blessing of the fleet. If you go to Martha's Vineyard or P-Town, that's like a 3-day soiree, and they have, entertainers on the streets and everything like that. We don't have anything like that. And I think we're really missing the mark because that could bring in a significant amount of money.
Okay. Tourism, Kevin?
Sure. So I think we could do a better job in advertising our natural resources in terms of tourism. We have a lot of nature trails and beautiful areas in the community that are not part of the narrative. It's usually about our historic nature, our harbor, the food, things of that nature. But we could do a better job in trying to attract like geotourism, ecotourism, that type of thing. And that would also help us potentially while we're pursuing the 1,530.35 acres at the Holtec site because it's the highest area within a mile of the ocean between a point in Georgia and a point in Maine. There's some natural vistas there. It's already popular with mountain bikers. So there's something that we could get there. I do think, though, tourism kind of is, other than that, is what it is in the community. We have a reputation for it, but tourism is an industry that when the economy goes south, people cut out their trips. So I think, again, we need to diversify our economic base to get away from a single entity type of economy. We have done that in the past, been entirely dependent on one big thing, whether it was Cordage Park or whether it was the nuclear power plant. And both of those aren't here anymore. And instead of trying to get, again, one big thing to come swoop in and fix all of our problems, we should instead diversify our base to bring in a variety of jobs that more people can afford to live and work in the same community. And that's the way out of the current problem that we're in. That's the way to keep more Plymouthians living, working, and retiring in the same community to improve their quality of life. That's the way to move Plymouth forward.
Okay, thank you. Tourism, Scott?
And again, growing up downtown, tourism was always, near and dear to me. When I was in high school, that was where we all had our jobs. I was the assistant manager at Pebbles across from the Mayflower. I actually got to meet a prince from Japan and make him a cheeseburger once. Everybody else worked in all the gift shops and all that other stuff, or they worked at the plantation. One of my friends in high school was actually funny. If he got a couple of beers in her, or she slipped into character and started talking Old English. But we're in tourist season right now, and our waterfront's a disaster. We've repeatedly tried to shove a square peg in a round hole down Water Street and put a gravity-fed line on loosely packed fill that settles. And I'm not an engineer, but we've tried this. This iteration is like the third iteration just for this project, but we've tried it 3 times since the 70s. So one of the things that we need to do is look at the big picture and say, let's stop causing problems in the heart of our financial lifeblood, which is tourism. Everybody comes, they'll go look at the Rock, they get disappointed, they go to the plantation, which is a very nice place. And we need to reinvigorate that. Unfortunately, COVID took a big toll on society. COVID reshaped our society, in many ways not for the better. In 2019, I remember getting out of a 4 to 12 shift. We'd all go downtown. We'd meet the people from the hospital, some of the firefighters. We'd all go down, have a couple of drinks, and enjoy it. And the whole downtown was alive until 1 o'clock or so in the morning when they shooed everybody out after last call. Nowadays, you go down there on a Saturday night, and it's 10, 11 o'clock, and it's a ghost town. You know what I mean? So it's a societal shift, to people in COVID. You locked them in their houses for 3 years. They get used to watching Netflix, and on a Friday or a Saturday night, they'll order DoorDash because now they don't even have to drive to McDonald's and watch Netflix all night. So part of it is a societal change. You know what I mean? But one of the things we can do is stop digging up the waterfront into tourist season. That would be a big help. And make it a much nicer place.
Okay. You have all mentioned that we need economic development. We do have a economic development foundation that I believe has done quite a few things for economic development, especially the blue economy, entrepreneurship, the kids' job fair, the kids that set up their own little businesses, and also See Plymouth, which is our used to be called Destination Plymouth, which Paul Cripps used to run, and he used to have the saying, I need to get heads in beds. That was his whole function. We got to get heads in beds and bring people here. So nobody mentions any of that when you talk about tourism, and I'm just wondering why. Scott?
And you brought up Paul's name, and Paul was a good friend. And actually his son worked for me when I owned the cabs. His passing was a great hit to our community because he was such a driving force when it came to tourism. And just you making me think about him and visualizing him, I appreciate that. We do need to look at the big picture. We need to look at all aspects, whether it's the blue economy, whether it's driving people, tourism's, to come and look at the boat and the Rock and the plant. It's not the plantation anymore, Tuxet. That anything that we can do to encourage those. You know what I mean? And I'm hoping that we can find the next Paul Cripps that's as driven as he was.
We just hired Keikel Oral, who is from Boston.
I haven't had the opportunity.
Yeah, she's got a lot of
to sit
experience.
with,
Yeah.
but like that's what we need. We need that vigorous advocacy, to expand our tourism base because we're Plymouth, Massachusetts. We're America's hometown, and we're going to be America's hometown forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hopefully, we can have some vision. Like I said, the 250th is a missed opportunity. We didn't see it coming for 249 years, and now we're trying to do it in a couple of months before it happens. So having somebody with vision to really plan ahead is what we need.
Okay. Betty, can you speak to the Plymouth Foundation and See Plymouth and how that all ties in with tourism and events and things?
So one thing I just kind of wanted to make clear, that waterfront project, it was our board that funded that with ARPA funds. And the reason why we did it, because we had spoken to engineers, and if any of that sewer, if something happened to one of the sewer lines and anything happened, that sewerage would have gone into the harbor. And then Plymouth would be done. there wouldn't be tourism, there wouldn't be aquaculture, there wouldn't be any commercial fishing. It would destroy our community. And, I mean, tourism is the last thing that we think about because we still have a harbor full of commercial fishermen, whether it's lobster, whether it's aquaculture, or whatever it is that they're doing. So I kind of wanted to clarify that because, and I know it hasn't done well, but it's right at the end. I believe June 1st, it'll be completed. And it was necessary to put that into place so it wouldn't destroy the community in our town. So tourism. I heard the Sea Plymouth woman is fantastic. And I think that, you know, all of us, there has to be like a working group with all the Economic Foundation, you know, Plymouth Foundation, Sea Plymouth. You got to get together and like come up with a plan. I can sit here and tell you a million things that I would do. Winterfest was something that I created, and it was fabulous. Shut down the streets.
Yeah.
It was on a winter day, families, you know, but it brought a lot of people into our town.
Yeah. Kevin?
Sure. So I think some of the blue economy does have knock-on effects for tourism because like Duxbury has Island Creek oysters. You know, we can have a Plymouth equivalent. We are taking steps to improve the grading of our harbor so that it's more economically viable. And we have a reputation on the global stage because we'll be able to, if we do make improvements to it, be able to sell oysters into Europe, which will obviously be some passive advertising out there. But again, and we have made other steps like bringing in the American cruise lines rather. But again, I think tourism kind of is what it is other than that eco and geotourism. You can bring in a few more heads into those beds, but we're not going to tourism our way out of our problems. We need a diverse economic base so that more people can live and work in the community. Service industry jobs do not pay a living wage that people can afford to live and work in Plymouth. The people that own those businesses, sure. The manager, maybe, but a lot of the staff, no, they cannot. And so we need more jobs that pay a wage that you can afford to have one job and live and work in the boundaries of this community. That'll improve your quality of life as well as our economic base. And I
Okay.
think that's the path forward.
Okay, thank you. So before we get into your closing statements, and we didn't take a break because we didn't need to take a break because you guys have been wonderful and you've been wonderful. This question is in regard to your service to Plymouth, whether it's be on a board, a committee, or any other organization in which you have participated. And my question is, looking back at the last few years, is there any view of a particular subject about which you have changed your thinking? We're going to do Scott and then Betty. Scott and then Betty and then Kevin.
Is there one specific thing? I would say no. But as I consider myself a professional student, and I like to learn from everything I do and learn from all the people that I interact with. I've served on different boards and committees, again, whether it was from town meeting, charter commission, charter review, redevelopment, and I take all of that in. And I like to think that I continuously evolve as a person and evolve in my knowledge of our town. And, you know, I build all of it as historic and institutional knowledge as a baseline to move forward. And one of the things that I is kind of like my mantra is never peak. You can always learn, you can always improve, you can always do something better next time. So do I have one specific thing that I've changed my attitude on completely? I would probably say no. Has my view of our town evolved over time? Yes, with all new information that comes in, with every different new experience, board or committee that I serve on. And again, it's aside from, you know, serving in the United States Marine Corps, serving as a police officer in Plymouth, and serving on boards and committees for coming up on 20 years, I think I have a pretty good track record. And most of it's on tape with PAC TV if you ever wanted to watch, and if you got nothing else to do for hours and hours and hours. But I like to think that every time I do something, even whether it was run from select board last year, you know what I mean? Did I adapt from some of those issues? Yes, adapted, moved forward, grown as a person, and taken everybody's input to serve our community better. Thank you.
Betty?
Is there one thing? Well, I never imagined, never planned it being a select board member. I ran once and I lost. And then during that time, I said to myself, what is it that I am doing wrong that I wasn't able to win the seat to give myself and give our residents some of my perspective on things. So I took a year, 2 years off. I actually got on FinCom. I learned everything you could possibly learn is being on FinCom, as far as I'm concerned. That was the best experience I have ever had that taught us so much about how this government is run. And I honestly, like, I got up one day and I said to my husband, I think I'm going to run for selectman. He's looking at me like, are you crazy? So, but that has changed my mind. And honestly, I think that people should be required to do a stint on the Advisory and Finance Committee, because that is really where you learn everything. Is it something in particular that I've changed my mind? Yes, because, you know, you turn around and it's like the reason why I got involved was because I was mad. And when I figured out what I was going to do and I came into office, I was no longer there for me. I was there for someone else. And I'll use an example is that the marijuana dispensary, I was completely against it. But you know what? The people that I represent weren't. So I had to change the way I thought because of it.
Okay. And Mr. Canty?
Sure. So I've always thought that economic development in the community was important, but I used to think we didn't need in-house economic development in order to accomplish it. Basically, to paraphrase Field of Dreams, if we zone it, that they would come. But that hasn't worked out in and of itself, and I do think that it would be worthwhile to invest the money in in-house economic development services, whether that means a staff person running that operation in-house on a day-to-day basis, or whether it means contracted services that are managed through the planning department. But either way, I think there should be direct report to have in-house economic development be somebody's entire responsibility within the community, so that we can bring in the types of jobs that we want. Because we are an extremely attractive community for people to live in, but we have not been as attractive a community for people to open and continue to operate a business in. And the businesses that have opened and operated are not paying, as I alluded to earlier, the types of wages that our residents need in order to be able to live and work in the same community. And I think that in-house economic development would be a meaningful step in the right direction to being able to address that. It was something that I didn't think was necessary some time ago, but having experienced it, having gone through the comprehensive plan development process and seeing all the things that we have to do, I do think that there is enough work there to justify that position, and that the return on investment would be more than worth it. So that is something that I have evolved on over time.
Okay, thank you. Before you finish your closing statements, I'd like to thank all of you, and to the voters at home. There's no doubt that anyone who runs for office puts themselves out there, and it's a grind. You guys have had, I don't know how many forums and interviews that you've gone through. It's been intense, and I appreciate you being here tonight. And voters, you need to educate yourselves. You need to do your own homework. You need to figure out the math. You gotta see who you believe is going to be the best candidate for the select board. You have 2 seats open and 4 candidates running. Again, we're sorry that Mr. Quintal couldn't be here tonight. He did have a family medical situation where he could not attend. So thank you. Thank you for running. Thank you for your love and your passion for your town, which is very obvious for all of you. You're all very different people, but you all bring your own level of experience. So thank you. Thank you to the audience, who's been incredibly kind and sweet and patient, because this has been a long night. So we're going to do closing remarks, and it's going to be Betty, and then it's going to be Scott, and it's going to be Kevin. 2 minutes.
I'm going to read.
Okay.
So, thank you for taking the time to learn about me and my vision for Plymouth. This town is not just my home, it's our home, and its future depends on all of us coming together. I have experience and dedication and the proven record to deliver real results. I know what matters to you because I share your concerns and your dreams for our community. I will always put Plymouth first, listen to your needs, and work tirelessly to make life better for every resident, no matter who you are or how you voted in the past. Now I'm asking you for your support and your vote. Let's keep Plymouth moving forward, protecting what makes our town special and building the future filled with opportunity, fairness, and pride. Together, we can achieve great things. Please vote for me, Betty Cavaco, and let's make a real difference in Plymouth.
Thank you. Scott?
Thank you. Thank you, Julie, and thank you to the audience, and thank you to everybody that's participated in all these forums. This is a different election. There is a fiscal crisis looming, and I've noticed that a lot of voters are becoming more educated and are actually really diving deep into the candidates and finding out what they are. By this point, everybody should know enough about me. I'm a retired gunnery sergeant of Marines, a retired Plymouth Police Sergeant. I've served our community. I was medically evacuated from Iraq. But I have 2 asks for you. And my 2 asks for you are, 1, stop voting for the people that got us into this mess and vote with your wallet. Vote for Becky. I have a plan for our fiscal crisis, and it starts with no override. I will not support an override. I will not ever advocate for an override. I will zealously advocate against it. And full and complete audit of the town of Plymouth. I think that we deserve to know where every dime of your taxpayer money is before we start asking for any more money. And again, a line by line, each line item. Explain your budget to me like I'm 3, so I can make sure that your tax money is being spent as judiciously and responsibly as possible. The only way that I can get there is with your help. I need your vote on or before May 16th. And I can promise to you that I will be your zealous advocate, that I will look after your hard-earned money that you've paid in taxes. What sets me apart is a couple of things. I've already said I'm not taking the $4,000 stipend. That I'm going to donate it to the animal shelter, because I think a leader sets the example in tough times. $4,000, can the animal shelter use it far more than I can? Yes. Would I feel comfortable taking that salary knowing that our town is in dire financial straits? No. I go above and beyond. When Matt Tavares came in and gave his presentation.
That was your 2 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Canty?
Thank you very much. My name is Kevin Canty, and I am running for re-election to the Select Board. I had the privilege of being elected to the board in 2023, and I am running for my 2nd term. I'm a lifelong Plymouth resident. I grew up in West Plymouth. I live in North Plymouth now. I am a local attorney working in criminal defense, taking court-appointed criminal cases, primarily in Plymouth District and Plymouth Superior Court. I know what it's like to be a student in Plymouth. I know what it's like to graduate from high school in Plymouth. I know what it's like to commute back here from college on the weekends, what it's like to commute from here to law school and then to work in Boston. I know what it's like to start my career here in Plymouth, and I know what it's like to buy my first house in Plymouth. I am increasingly concerned that the story that I just told you is not going to be a story that people are going to be able to tell in the future. I think that we are pricing the next generation of our Plymouthians out of this community. People that want to stay here, live here, work here, and someday retire here. People like me. I got involved in this town after I moved back to Plymouth because I realized when I grew up here how special it was and how it was the work of other people that I didn't know that made it what it was. And I wanted to give back and make it special for the next generation. People that I'll never meet. People that won't know who I am or what I did. But every day that I do the work that I do it for the people that are going to come after me. I have the long-term interest of our community in mind, Not just what the decision I'm making is today, but what it's going to affect in 1 year, 10 years, 30 years down the road. We need to make this town more affordable for people to live, work, and retire here. More people need to be able to live and work in the same community. We need a more sustainable town. We need to get out ahead of issues like climate change. And we need smart and balanced economic development. If we don't do these things now, it'll be too late, and we will lose what makes Plymouth most special, its people. Please vote for me on or before Saturday, May 16th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the candidates. And thank you to you at home, and thank you so much to the local scene for recording this and having people be able to watch it right away online. Thank you. Good night.